Hey everybody, what's up? This is Antonio with Talk with Antonio. I am your host, Antonio. And for this week's episode, oh my goodness. I don't even know where to start, honestly, people. Because this episode right now, honestly, it's very... How can I say this? I know I don't know if I'm being dramatic or I'm just, it's just because the way I am. It's something that hits home. And why do I say that is because I'm sorry, it's just whew, oh my goodness. It's very personal to me. And why do I say that? Okay. It talks about the place that I have called home for the past 33 years. And what I'm talking about, you might say, I'm talking about nothing more than the good old, the San Fernando Valley. And, oh my goodness. I have to talk about this, but I won't be talking about this in a podcast episode. I will reveal this on an Instagram video down the line. But that will be for another time. But I'm talking about because something happened about a few days ago in the San Fernando Valley, specifically in the city of Pacoima. And what I'm talking about is that plane crash that happened at Whiteman Airport on San Fernando Road in Pacoima, California. And, during the time that I used to live there, because I lived in Pacoima for the past 16 years, from 2009, or I think it was 2008 or 2009 up until this year in February or March. I don't remember, because right now when it comes to that my mind is one big blur, And I lived there. I remember that during the time that I used to live there, I did see on San Fernando Road, I used to see this airport. I was like, what the fuck is this? Because during the time that I used to live in the valley, the airports that I knew were Burbank Airport and I don't know if it's the same Burbank Glendale Airport, but that was the one that I knew most of the time. But that was like, that received like, what is it? Like regular airplanes, like Southwest. It was just like a normal airport. It was like a smaller airport per se. And I remember that those were the ones I remember. But when I moved to Pacoima, I used to see this airport. And I used to see like all these small planes landing all the time. I was like, because since I love taking walks. I hated when I was much younger, but then as I got older, I love taking walks. And then I used to take this walk on San Fernando Road, and I remember seeing these airplanes like landing. Like, what the fuck is this? I was like, okay. I never really paid attention, but I do remember hearing about the airplanes. I used to make those loud sounds, and when they were landing, they used to really brake and used to make these loud sounds. I do remember telling my family once upon a time that. It was, what the fuck is this? These airplanes making these loud sounds. I understand people who live near big airports. Like, for example, I consider this a big airport, Burbank Airport, or even LAX in Inglewood. I understand that. But I remember I was like about to go to sleep because I had just arrived from work, like around 11 o'clock. I don't remember the exact time or year, but I remember when I got home from work and I hear like this loud ass plane, like, I was like, okay, what the fuck? But then, I do remember hearing that it was loud, but I never really paid attention to it up until like later on. I think it was like during the pandemic of the year 2020. And then little did I know that I did a little bit of research. The Pacoima Airport, because I always call it Pacoima Airport. It's called Whiteman Airport, KWHP. It says here that according to the advocacy group Pacoima Beautiful, the airport causes lead pollution and has seen over 85 accidents in 70 years, leading to calls for its redevelopment. And I was like, what the fuck? And you know what? Before this, I do remember that during 2020, I do remember hearing about they did like a little meeting with all the people of Pacoima, and people voted to shut it down. But the majority of the people who voted no to keep it open were a bunch of I'm not saying old people, but I think it was like these people who own planes. And I did see I saw pictures of it online, and I was like, yep, baby boomers. They were the ones who were against to shutting it down. And you know what though? But then I did a little bit of research, and there is the Whiteman Airport has always been controversial in the city of Pacoima. And this is what it says here according to Google. It says here, key aspects of the controversy. Number 1, safety concerns. Residents are calling to close the airport after 4 planes crashed in 5 years. Listen to that, people. Wow. The most recent incident that happened right now on April 20th, when a plane clipped power lines. And I've seen the video. It's all over I think it's all over Instagram and TikTok. There was this one fellow. I think he was driving on Van Nuys Boulevard. He was like reaching, and you could see the plane. I guess he missed it. It clipped the electrical the power lines, and there's like a lot of residents who were out of power for the past couple of days. And then it says here, number 2, environmental and health risk. Activists argue that the airport's lead-based aviation fuel disproportionately affects the health of nearby Pacoima residents. Okay, that makes sense, because I've known for a fact that people who live near huge airports like LAX have complained about health concerns because of, especially, like they land in LAX especially. It's not just small planes like the big ass A380 or even the 747. They leave like a trail of smoke, and that's fucking polluting. And so it's very understandable. And it says here, look at this: a local and action and opposition. LA County actually owns this stupid ass airport. And it says here, LA County officials are conducting a $1.3 million study for potential closure/redevelopment. Conversely, airport advocates and pilots quoted by the San Fernando Sun argue the airport is essential for aviation and emergency services, that users should expect noise. Okay. These people who are advocating not to shut it down are people who own airplanes. I mean, what the fuck? What does that airport do for the community? It's nothing. I understand for emergency services, that's a different story. But majority of the time that I saw in that area are just small planes owned by regular people. And you know what the funny thing is that airport is not open to the public. The public doesn't even use the airport. So I was like, so what the fuck is the point of that? You know what I'm saying? And it says here, there's another one, legal hurdles. The FAA confirmed that because the airport accepted federal grants, it is legally obligated to remain open. That's just typical, And it says here, another one, political pressure. Council member Monica Rodriguez has been calling for the airport's closure since 2020, as is shown in an Instagram post. And yeah, I do remember seeing that. And it says here also, the airport operated by LA County maintains it adheres to safety standards. The debate pits community safety and environmental health against the continued need for general aviation infrastructure. Okay. As I said before, I've also seen interviews that they did because of what happened on April 20th when that plane crashed. There was, I think it was like this barber who said that they're not making any money because there's no power line. I think it was another resident. It was like this black gentleman. I think he was like in his 60s or 70s. He said this, and this is so true. He said, I've seen this airport pretty much all my life, and I don't use it. What do I need it for? If I need to go to the airport, I go to Burbank Airport. And Pacoima is not that far from Burbank, honestly. And he's right. What's the purpose of that airport there? It's useless. And if I remember correctly, back in January of 2022, okay, if you remember correctly, this plane crash that happened on April 20th of this year, that's not the first time I've seen stuff like that happen. During the time I was living in Pacoima, if I remember correctly, it was in January of 2022. I was on Osborne Street. I wasn't that far away from the railroad tracks on San Fernando Road. I do remember hearing a loud bang. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I went to look, and it was a small plane. And he actually landed on the railroad tracks. And thankfully, they got the pilot out. But I remember hearing like the train horn. It was from Metrolink. I was like, oh no. And luckily, they got the pilot out, and I remember hearing the train horn, the honking, blasting, It just, boom, it just blew away the small plane. And I was like, oh, shit. And thankfully, they got the pilot out. So I do remember that since 2020, Monica Rodriguez has voted to shut down this airport. But I guess the like plane advocates said no. And now because of what happened this past April 20th, 2026, now this adds fuel to the fire. If you think about this for 1 second. Okay, this is another, this is from the San Fernando Valley, the Sun. It says here, Whiteman coalition members address concerns about airport amid closure study. Okay, this meeting with the Pacoima Neighborhood Council was held 5 days before another plane crash occurred on Monday. It says here, members of the Whiteman Airport Coalition addressed dozens of area residents and the Pacoima Neighborhood Council about the economic and community benefits of the local airport amid ongoing study exploring its proposed closure. Residents, pilots, business owners, and other stakeholders launched a coalition about 2 months ago to, quote, fight against what they view as, quote, misinformation about the Pacoima Airport. The future's up the air is up in the air, said coalition spokesperson Tara Feinstone. And I quote, we're going to the neighborhood councils, we're talking to lawmakers, we're talking to community members. A lot of people really don't understand what's going on and what's at stake with the potential closure of Whiteman Airport, which is a critical infrastructure landmark for Los Angeles County, unquote. Okay, but you know what, though? Like I said, it benefits her, but it doesn't benefit to the community or the people of Pacoima. And there's more. It says here that advocacy groups such as Pacoima Beautiful and some local residents disagree. Over the past several years, many people have called for the Whiteman Airport to be closed, citing in part of potential health hazards such as lead exposure and safety risk, including a fatal accident when a pilot was killed and a non-fatal collision between a Metrolink train and an aircraft in 2022. This is the one that I was talking about. And it says here, last week's meeting was held less than a week before an April 20th accident in Pacoima, when a single-engine Cessna clipped high-voltage power lines and crashed upside down in the parking lot of an O'Reilly's Auto Parts store near Ralston Avenue and Van Nuys Boulevard, blocks from Whiteman Airport. Oh, my God. At the O'Reilly's Auto Parts store? Jesus Christ. I used to go there sometimes. Can you fucking believe that? You know, there's videos of when that plane crashed. Oh my God, you know what? They'll bless the people of Pacoima. There's good people in this world still. And sorry if I get emotional. It's just because it's an area that I lived for the past 16 years. And I've seen the video of how the people were like a bunch of people were pushing to get them to move to flip over the plane. And luckily the pilot got out. And oh my God, I just saw this at O'Reilly. Oh my God. Sorry if I got off track. It says here that the pilot was the only person on board when the plane went down. He survived the crash and was transported to a local hospital where he continues to recover, according to the coalition. No other injuries or major property damage were reported in the aftermath of the crash. And it says here that the pilot was 70 years old. For the first day, he was in critical condition, but right now, according to the Sun, he's doing well. Thank goodness, you know. But it's just, you know what it kind of reminds me of? If y'all remember correctly, it was in 2013, if I remember correctly. I was in Malibu working, and I remember while I was having lunch, they put a breaking news on CNN. It was a golf course here in probably in LA, probably like around Westwood or Brentwood. So it was somewhere in Los Angeles that a small plane crashed. And I was like, oh shit, that sucks. But then lo and behold, it was revealed the pilot was none other than Harrison Ford. I was like, oh shit, Harrison Ford. And when I heard what he crashed, I was like, oh shit. But you know what though? This is something that I've talked about with my family and some of my friends, that people who get it at an advanced age. Look, I'm not saying this to insult anybody, but I do believe that people who are that age should not be flying airplanes anymore. You know, cars, that's a different story. But in terms of airplanes, that's a different story right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is like a huge responsibility. Oh my God, a plane is like, it's more heavier than a car. And imagine when it crashes, like people like Harrison Ford and this pilot who was 70 years old. I don't know how old Harrison Ford was in 2013. And now with this pilot who crashed, 70 years old, I'm saying there should be like more. I do believe that the FAA should set more rules and put it like at a certain age that people like that should not be flying airplanes anymore. I mean, that's just me though. Like I said, I don't want to insult anybody, but I do believe the FAA should reevaluate their rules in terms of what age people could fly airplanes, you know? But I'm sorry about that. And this is continuing the article about this one. It says here that in February 2023, the Whiteman Airport Community Advisory Committee voted to recommend the closure of Whiteman following a 2-year assessment. The next year, the LA County Board of Supervisors approved a $1.9 million study looking to the possible impacts of shutting down the airport, which was established in 1946 and acquired by LA County in 1970. It says here that the current study, which is being conducted by a consulting firm, includes a 4-phase plan to assess the various steps that would be required to close Whiteman. It is also exploring land use alternatives for the airport's 180 plus acres of land, including affordable housing. Community concerns. It says here that Feinstein and other coalition members believe the safety and health concerns attributed to the airport have been overstated. And I quote, "Any accident is horrible and any loss of life is horrific. That is the number one," said Feinstein, unquote. She pointed out that the overall accident rate is exceedingly low. Of course she's going to fucking say that, you know? Especially considering that there are up to 100,000 airport operations per year, which include all aircraft's takeoffs and landings. Regarding lead exposure, she said, the LA County Department of Health in the South Coast Air Quality Management Districts studied community lead levels and found, and I quote, "They're far below EPA standards, and local children's blood levels will also EPA standards as well," she said. Nothing, those studies are available online. Of course, they're not going to put it online because it doesn't benefit her. Because, you know, this lady says all this stuff because she has an agenda, you know, and she says more. And I quote, "The biggest pollution risk around here are the freeways." Of course, she's going to fucking say that. That has been established, she added. Of course, she's going to say that, you know, because this lady has a fucking agenda, you know. However, it says here, in the fall of 2023, the EPA announced that exposure to lead emissions from aircraft that utilize lead fuel, quote, "can cause irreversible and lifelong health effects in children," unquote. Theodora Reyes, a longtime Pacoima resident and co-founder of Voces Unidas Pacoima, it says now, in parentheses, now Voces Unidas San Fernando Valley, discussed her health concerns about Whiteman via Zoom, and she said this, and I quote, "Our community has a harsh history with environmental injustices, including industrial pollution," said Reyes. Noting she believes the airport contributes to the potentially dangerous pollution, especially due to the continued use of leaded fuel by many aircraft that use the airport. She said more, and I quote, "Leaded fuel is the last fuel that has not been transitioned out. We have had such successes in being able to introduce unleaded aviation fuel as an alternative fuel that is being offered to airports throughout the country, she added. We understand that you have your hobbies and you want to make sure that this airport stays open, but there's a need to recognize that this airport has had multiple issues beyond just accidents, she said. It's a public health issue affecting the community. That's what what's her name? Theodora Reyes said. Now, Esteban Roth, a Pacoima resident and pilot with the Latino professionals in aerospace, said the transition to unleaded fuel is in process at Whiteman. This is what this dude said, and I quote, "We are one of the few airports that have the option right now to use unleaded fuel for aircraft, but it's not an airport-only decision. It is also the decision of aircraft owners," said Roth. Part of the challenge is that not all aircraft are certified or approved for the transition to unleaded fuel, unquote. It's something that is happening at Whiteman, he said, but it will be a matter of time. You know what, though? And I spoke to somebody yesterday at the Monica. I made a phone call because I'm very interested in this because it is a place that I lived for X amount of years. And like I said, even though I don't live there, but the San Fernando Valley will always be my home. And I called the offices of Monica Rodriguez, and I spoke to somebody. And he said that because of this incident, this added more fuel to the fire. Of course, they're going to shut it down, but it will take time. And you know, like I said, these people who own these planes, they don't want this airport to shut down because, like I said, where are they going to land their plane? Where'd you just go to the fucking other airports around? Go to Burbank Airport or Burbank Glendale, whatever that shit is. But the one in Pacoima, I think that is just, I think it's a relic of the past. And the people who say no, like I said, are these people who don't want to shut down, and they're just out of touch, you know? Times have changed, you know? Those people can't just be stuck in the past, like especially with this fucking airport. And it says here that in response to community concerns regarding noise pollution stemming from the airport, Nathan Clark, a pilot and flight instructor with Vista Aviation at Whiteman, emphasized that closing the local airport is unlikely to result in a reduction in noise from airplanes flying overhead. He said this, and I quote, "If Whiteman airspace gets dissolved, this will more likely just become perfect airspace for nearby airports, specifically for Burbank and Van Nuys," explained Clark. "The little Cessna flying over that sounds like a small lawnmower will be traded for 737 jetliners. In addition," he said, "this area will still be covered in Cessnas just going in and out of Van Nuys Airport instead of Whiteman." The benefits of Whiteman. It says here in the article, Whiteman's diverse economic and community benefits are often either overlooked or simply remain unknown by the general public, noted Feinstein. She described the airport as, quote, vital economic engine for LA County, for which $110 million flowing into your economy each year. That's what she says, you know. Some of the businesses at the airport include, that's what I was saying, include KTLA 5 News, Vista Aviation, Keystone Aerial Surveys, and Glendale Community College, which has a flight school. There are also public safety agencies that operate out of Whiteman, such as U.S. Marshal's Office, CAL FIRE, and the LA County Fire Department. Okay. I agree with the fire department, or even like the news helicopters. But the airplanes, like I say, it doesn't. She says it serves the community, but it doesn't. It doesn't serve nothing for the community and the people of Pacoima. You know? It says here that the Fine Source says that Whiteman played an important role during last year's LA wildfires. In January 2025, when the whole firestorm was going on, the Hearst fire was burning in Sylmar and the Eaton fire was burning in Pasadena. They could have merged, and I can't even imagine a catastrophic fire that would have resulted, she said. Because LA County Fire and CAL FIRE were able to stage at Whiteman, they stopped the fires from merging. Meanwhile, she said, the county is spending millions to study the airport's closure, but there is a fundamental legal reason that has not been resolved. Whether the county would even have the ability to shut it down, she said. Whiteman operates under federal grant assurances, of course. That's why she doesn't want to shut it because they'll take away the grants. Tied to an agreement with the FAA dating back to 1998. These obligations require the airport to remain open unless the FAA formally releases it. So there's not even a local decision, said Feinstein. She said, and I quote, "To date, the FAA is giving no indication that it's willing to approve closure," she continued. "So why is the county investing significant public funds to study an outcome that might not even legally be viable in the first place? Further, the county could help support airport safety by choosing not to invest in Whiteman." Okay. This lady is clearly against Whiteman being shut down because she would not benefit from the grants, you know. And I guess she's kind of like condescending to the people who want to shut it down. And you know, it really angers me that the fucking government always has a say in everything. She says, "Oh, they should have shut it down because it benefits the people." Of course she's going to fucking say that, because imagine if they shut it down, they'll take away the grant. Of course she's going to. She wants that fucking money, you know? You know what, though? I'm not going to read any more of this fucking bullshit because... And it just not benefits her. But I will say this, though. Monica Rodriguez said this, and I quote, "It's about money and the LA sale. It's about money and LA and Monica Rodriguez, the county supervisor, and all the politicians have their pockets open. That's what it's all about," claimed Garcia. I said, hold on. I think I'm. Okay. It says here, PNC board member Ruben Garcia, who chairs the Neighborhood Council's Public Safety and Health Committee, believes the effort to close Whiteman is motivated by financial incentives. It's about money. Monica Rodriguez, the county supervisor, and all politicians have their pockets open. That's what it's all about, claimed Garcia. Because the one question nobody will answer, as if they're going to close the airport, what are you going to put there to replace the airport? And no one will give you that answer. Nobody. Okay. And he says there's more. Walter Garcia, who shares concerns about Whiteman, including the most recent accident, said the lack of plan shouldn't dissuade people from supporting the airport's closure. "The idea is that we don't know what would happen, that somehow that uncertainty means it shouldn't close is disrespectful to the community," said Walter Garcia, who was born and raised in Pacoima. "At the end of the day, the people here can come up with ideas." Okay. And there's more here. It says here, all right, so, you know, the people who are against of closing, of course they're going to say no, because I believe that if they dare take away their grant, you know, and I believe, even like I said, even though I don't live there anymore, but I believe that the people of Pacoima, they can vote to shut down this fucking airport, and because of what happened right now very recently with this plane crash, I do believe, as I said before, this adds fuel to the fire, ladies and gentlemen. So, in closing, what do I think? Should they shut down Whiteman Airport? Of course. I do firmly believe that. And I also believe that Whiteman Airport represents a clear and present danger to the city of Pacoima and its residents. That's just what I feel. As I said before, other people who I've seen interviews, the airport, it's fucking useless to the regular people. It only benefits the people who own airplanes or Cessna planes. They're the ones bitching and complaining that, oh, they should have shut it down. But in terms of regular people, it doesn't benefit them at all. You know, and that lady who was against that, who's whatever her name is, Firestone, whatever, I don't care. But this lady definitely has an agenda. You know, she doesn't fucking care about what the fuck is going on in Pacoima. She does not fucking care at all. And I will say that to this lady, if you ever hear this, whatever, let me see, what the fuck is her name? Let me see. Let me see. Where is this stupid ass lady's name? Fine. That's her last name, Feinstone. hey, lady, anything you say, I really don't give a fuck what you say. All I can say is, fuck you. You sorry piece of shit. Because that's what you are to me, a sorry piece of shit. And the people of Pacoima will vote to shut that goddamn airport down. I don't give a fuck what you say or these other people who own airplanes. If you want to keep airplanes, go to another airport. Go to Burbank or go to Van Nuys. Whiteman Airport is nothing more than a relic. It doesn't serve the community at all. They should just shut it down for good and maybe use that land for affordable housing or for anything, something that would benefit the people of Pacoima or something that would help for them, But for these people who are bitching, oh, they should have shut it down, go fuck yourselves, I'm sorry I'm getting emotional. It's because it was a city that lived there for the past 16 years. And if I were to have a chance to vote, I would say yes, shut that goddamn airport down. It's useless for the people of Pacoima. So, well, that about wraps up for this week's episode for my podcast. And stay tuned. If you want to find me on social media, find me on Instagram at Talk with Antonio. You can find my podcast on Spotify for creators, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and especially YouTube. You can find me there. And YouTube, click the link below and subscribe. If you like any of my my episodes, click the button, the button and subscribe and like my podcast audios. And that's pretty much it. And if y'all like this, give me a like or send me an opinion on talkwithantonio@gmail.com. And if you have anything to say, let me know. That about wraps up for this week's podcast. Thank you for listening and have a great evening.